Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320 and also on the web at WFHR.com, and we also welcome our friends from RCCA Media. This is a first in the history of AM 1320. It's our first high-definition digital recording of our discussion here in our studios. That's because River City's Community Access Media recently started broadcasting in high definition on Solaris Channel 3, and it's streaming in HD at rccamedia.org. However, Charter Channel 985 continues to broadcast in standard def. Come on, Charter, let's get on board with the 21st century, but hey, it's pretty cool. Now you can really see why I have a face for radio. Anyway, it's our monthly visit with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink, and our phone lines are open at 424-2600, pound 1320 on a U.S. cellular phone. With that, we welcome the Mayor of Wisconsin Rapids, Zach Vruwink. Good morning.
Good morning, Carl, and happy birthday to you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. If you're looking, those of you on TV, my wife provided a little birthday treat.
It looks tasty. I might have some. Saving it for
you're welcome
after. I'm just going to keep looking at it.
Yeah, right. No, you're welcome to have some. Yeah, I bit this big, like I said, 30 times 2, the big 6-0.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Well, yeah, it is. So, and thank you, Pam, for the treat. I appreciate it. So let's start off before we get to our phone calls. We got a caller coming in, but did you want to go to the caller right away?
That's fine, sure.
Okay, well, let's go right to the phones, and then we're going to talk with the mayor about the Common Council from last night. But you're on the air with Mayor Vruwink.
Say good morning, Mr. Vruwink. I've got a question for you. Does the city of Wisconsin Rapids own the softball diamond out at Robinson Park?
Yes, both fields actually, yeah, right. They are owned by the city. Mm-hmm.
All right. My question to you is: I attended the softball game out there this week, and the scoreboard lights did not work, and I've been told that they haven't worked for 2 years. Is that the city's responsibility to correct that problem?
We do have leases with the users of the field, so depending on which user or which field you were on, there are 2 entities now that use the fields there. But as part of the lease agreement, both parties make improvements to it. I don't believe the scoreboards were included in either party's desire to do improvements. There were other improvements planned out there, but that was not in the list, I don't believe.
Oh, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I was just wondering if you could use your power of being mayor to get somehow get that corrected and get that scoreboard fixed. Yeah,
it's something that the Park and Rec Commission could consider. We do have a park outlay budget that's allocated every year for improvements, such as improvements to Witter Field or Mead Fields or Robinson, and something that we could work to get a quote on to see what that would take.
That would be very fine, sir, because I know you got the regional softball tournament starting, and that would be a crying shame for those scoreboards not to be working out there under those circumstances.
Appreciate the suggestion, and I will take it back to our Park and Rec and see what we can do.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And that's how you do it. There's a gentleman called and brought up an issue, brought up a suggestion, and the mayor heard it, and that's how we're going to do things today. 424-2600, pound 1320 on a U.S. cellular phone. The city council took some actions yesterday. We got some exciting news to talk about, including the Rafters are having another festival coming to Witterfield, to the stadium. Let's talk about it. And it's going to celebrate our heritage, folks.
Mm-hmm. Cheese, nothing better than cheese curds. Something I think we all enjoy. It's amazing. Witterfield really is turning out to be a great event space. Something that was envisioned by past city plans that facility could offer more in terms of a space to host events like this. So I commend the Rafters. Obviously they've got motivations to do it. They want to bring people into the park, get exposure. This event is actually at the tail end of their season on August 2nd, but that is the Wisconsin Cheese Curd Festival or Fest event at Witterfield, and kind of exciting. It seems like they're going to try it this year, see where it goes. I give them credit for all the creativity that they continue to bring to the field, and for us it challenges the city a little bit because obviously it's our park. It's not the Rafters Park. It's a city park, so we have to in effect approve most of the things. There are some things in their lease that they're allowed to do without seeking off approval of these things, but things like this was not necessarily envisioned in their lease, so they came to us last night, and it was approved by the city council for them to host this event. The neat part about these events too is it not just attracts their customer fan base, right? It attracts anybody in this case. You don't even have to be a baseball fan. It doesn't really have a direct baseball play to it.
I think they're working with like the dairy council or so, and local dairy cheese producers, and they can sell other stuff at these things, but they're going to have a.
Yeah, I mean they've got the the beer sales and product available there, so it's a nice way to utilize the infrastructure, if you will, the buildings and all of the other facets of Witter Field.
Well, when I was there last week for their first pitch event, their invite-only thing, got to see the new addition to the stadium with the bar with the float and the paddle and the Craft River. That's really cool. But I noticed as we were all getting to leave, as I closed the front door, I had to, front gate. I had to get out the side gate. I'm going. You could get locked in the Raptor Stadium if you didn't get out, or if someone didn't check all the grounds.
That's right.
It's a very secure facility, which is good. I mean, they've made a number of nice improvements. Saw the improvements to the dugout, the new netting, and they were still in the process of doing some of the painting, and I guess the mural. I think the mural is now.
The mural went up on Saturday. I got a text from John on Saturday that the mural was up, and somebody actually sent me an email of it that was involved in the project. So that was a grassroots project of some community members that felt that. We didn't really have a good representation of history at Witter Field. There was a nice display that they had started a couple of years ago. The mural is just yet one other project that they're happy to showcase the history. And
it's going to make the stadium look real sharp as people enter that front gate for the All-Star game this Northwoods League. And from the city's standpoint, those are big events, and they're bringing in people from all, basically North America. Because
anybody that's playing or has, family members from that.
Time to share our
kids that are playing.
It's time to show our city, and we want to look good when we do that.
It's the last year in the rotation we're going to have in a long time for the All-Star game. We're very fortunate to have it a second time just in a short period of time. But now that the league has grown with the addition of new teams into the league, the chances of us bringing it back to Witter are pretty slim in the near future anyway. But yeah, you said it. The hotels like it. Obviously, the restaurants and all the other service businesses that receive benefit from these events obviously are very pleased. And any time they get a new injection of cash and into the community is a good thing.
And like I say, we can all be ambassadors for our city by welcoming our guests when they're here. And with that, let's go right back to the phones, Your Honor. You're on the Morning Magazine with Mayor Vruwink.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I had brought this up the last time that we had the mayor on the radio, and I'm just curious because it's still not done, but 17th Avenue. And I know you had mentioned it was like priority, but now we've got all these other projects around it. We've got West Grand Avenue, we've got the Riverview Expressway and all that, and 17th Avenue seems as they get working on it, and then they have to actually start all over by grading it and leveling it because everybody keeps driving on it even though the road's closed. So I guess what is the timeline on that street?
Yeah, it was May 14th. I have correspondence between myself and the street superintendent that it was to be completed by that point. There were some challenges apparently that occurred in the last 2 weeks that moved that date to the end of May. Since the county is doing the paving, Wood County does the paving on that project, coordination with the other contractors, there was a delay in the curb and gutter, which was obviously outside of city-specific crew work, but you are right. Obviously, if the road's closed, local traffic is allowed, but the through traffic is not allowed. So we obviously hope that residents heed that warning and not use the street for through traffic. But they have given us a timeline of the end of May now, which I am in agreement. It has taken us far longer than it should have to get that project reopened.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks for the call.
Okay, thank you for the call.
Thank you.
Bye. That brings up a question I have as a follow-up. When you have a project like this, like you mentioned, it's a county project as well. How do you go about coordinating that?
Well, this was a case where coordination could have occurred a little bit better. And unfortunately, residents have to live with the consequences, and that is a closed street. I can say that as we've now gotten through some interviews and we're still taking applicants for the Public Works Director position, that there's a reason why that position was recreated. And it's because that sometimes there's a lack of coordination that results in streets being closed longer, or projects taking longer, or disruption. Not even just closure; it's just disruption of things.
I'll bring up another thing. It came up last week on Over the Back Fence. A gentleman called me and was venting about a street that was being closed, and that they were going to start work on it, and they. It would have been nice if we would have gotten letters to know about it. I can't remember the exact address.
I believe it was 7th Avenue.
Yeah.
And
7th Avenue.
Street.
Yep. Can you explain what happened there? Shouldn't the people, hey.
I'll repeat my comment. There's an opportunity for greater coordination and greater communication. And frankly, this stuff shouldn't happen. Happen. End of the day, we obviously have standards within our processes, both engineering and streets, and the utility. The water and light utility has a role in this as well, and then private contractors. We don't do the entirety, 100% of the work for good reasons, and so sometimes when there's a handoff between engineering, who does the design, and then streets constructs, sometimes folks don't always communicate to the extent that they should be, and so there were some meetings that occurred last week on that particular issue to call out and to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Okay. Period. That's a Lean Six Sigma project, that sounds.
I'll tell you, there are aspects of Lean Six Sigma that will need to be applied there. We're even, as part of the budget process, we're already talking for 2016, how do we facilitate through the budget a much more coordinated design construction process. We utilize methods that we've always utilized before for the sake of always doing it that way, and it sounds cliche, but that's an example of something that we haven't decided to. I shouldn't say we haven't decided to. Some folks have said we need to improve it. There just hasn't been the follow through and the accountability to actually get it done. So I can say to our listeners who are experiencing pain in some of these projects as it relates to public works, there's work to be done, and I will admit it that our department heads and I are committed to finding solutions. It's just a matter of actually working to implement them and then to maintain them, right? Not revert back to the old way of doing that.
Well, I would think one way is to set up, invite the neighbors. If you have a big street project, send out a mass mailing or drop people.
It's part of our processes.
And say, and we're going to have a meeting at City Hall at this time to address any of your concerns. You're invited to attend.
And we do them for, they're called an open house before the public hearing.
Okay, right.
So everybody has to have a public hearing, and sometimes those public hearings are a little bit further out than the project gets started because of funding levels. So a problem we have with some of those projects is you'll have a 2 or 3 year gap. So if you're a new homeowner, or there's
or some, people forget, like me, you forget about it.
Yeah. I forget what the meeting was about. I forget what the answer to the question I had was, all of that stuff. But there's a open house and then a public forum. We have actually a couple of summers ago, I was up in Ashland, Wisconsin, and went up to Bayfield after that. And Bayfield both communities had something they must have taken from each other. I don't know who created it, but in a restaurant they had posted all of the public works construction projects that were coming up and when the anticipated start and completion dates were, who to call if you had questions, all of that information. And that's something that was very simple, but as just a visitor, it was helpful. It's very informative. As
we're in the high-tech wireless world, is this something that we can put online? Tab projects in the city or whatever. Hit this,
it's
here's
right on our city website. But sometimes that information again was done through the budget, so things have changed, timelines have changed. The Public Works Committee does maintain a project schedule, so our chairman Tom Rayom does at the end of every meeting they review the project timeline, and so there is a schedule for all of these things. Obviously, weather permitting and other variables. But by and large, some of these things can be avoided, and they must be avoided if we can fix it, right? If we can work around it and make it not happen, then we should. We shouldn't just allow it to happen. and tell people to live with it. That's not appropriate.
No, it's not. And like the gentleman was very upset when he called me, and I had suggested he call you at City Hall or his older person or what.
I got calls on that project. He may have called me. I don't know who it was, but that called you. But it's an issue,
and I don't blame people being upset. I'd be upset too if all of a sudden I'm going, what's going on here?
Nobody likes number one. Nobody wants disruptions to occur, but they're a fact of life. However, when the disruption goes longer or is a larger scale than what it could have been, that's a problem, and that's when then we need to get those situations rectified.
Okay, so
thanks for bringing it up, and I'm glad that
I'm glad
I was able to share my thoughts and perspectives.
Well, I'm glad you brought. That's what this forum is about, and I thought about it. That I was going to bring that up on behalf of that gentleman. And any issues you have, 424-2600 pound 1320 on a U.S. cellular phone. Another big thing, as you know, the Tribune Building project has been ongoing with the Incourage Community Foundation. It has created something that you wanted, which was the input of the citizens. A lot of citizens have been very motivated and have been involved in this process throughout the entirety of it. And now I understand, and the Common Council took action yesterday they're going to be moving the community picnic, which has become a nice event, but I think this fits in with what the Tribune Building project is about.
Right on. And I think I'm pleased, number one, because they're moving it back into the city. Obviously, it was at Wazeecha the last 2 years. Great location for it, awesome venue to showcase. Obviously, they have a desire, and I give them credit for showcasing the natural assets of our community, greater Wisconsin Rapids area, right? Not just the city. But I think the scale of the event, it's a very, very large event, very well attended. So it's going to require some orchestration and coordination by all entities, both Incourage and the city. So they came to the city yesterday and for a special events application on August 5th, so 3 days later than Curd Fest, will be the community picnic this year. But it will be downtown. It'll be on the west side of the river bank, and a number of streets will be closed to facilitate the large scale of the event. But it seems that they're going to be doing some additional entertainment. We can't obviously have the aqua skiers float up and down the river to the extent that they can out at Wazeecha. So there's an opportunity here to do some different entertainment.
Did they mention that? Or
live music and some of that pieces. I think they're going to have their kids' fun houses and things like they do out at Wazeecha today downtown. So they asked for use of some of the streets. In the event that there's a weather situation, the Riverwalk at Centralia Center is also included. But there will be, obviously they've asked for the noise ordinance to be, for variance in the noise ordinance for a live band. So they're going to be working on putting all that together. So August 5th is the date.
I better mark that on my calendar. I've done. The reason why in the last 2 years I was their friendly public address announcer.
Okay.
So if they. I will clear my calendar. If the folks at the foundation are listening, I will clear my calendar.
So it looks like it's going to be an event fun for all ages.
Yeah.
The way they.
Well, I can see why they wanted to do it. Especially maybe they might even have not to put any ideas in their head, but they might want to highlight. Okay, here are where we're at with the Tribune Building project. This is what's going to be happening with this site. Maybe they might have some documentation out, so people can take a look and walk around. I mean, it'd be a good PR opportunity to build on it. But this is something you and other cities across Wisconsin are trying to do, is get people back to the downtown.
Right. And really to the natural asset. It just so happens, I think, that our traditional downtown city core is in the waterfront area. It could have been, in a block, maybe not on the water. Like Stevens Point's, for example, is adjacent to but not directly surrounding their waterfront. So I think, and actually it takes us to the last point one of the other points from council last night, was the communities that have directly invested in space surrounding their waterfront have seen on average a $7 return on that investment. I can't.
So for every dollar that they
the
spent,
municipality puts in,
they get $7 return.
Yes.
Get me an investment like that. I'll put money
crazy.
in.
It's uncommon. I think Green Bay's waterfront had a little bit higher than that. There's some that have some lower. So on average, though, So a couple of them that we looked at were Beloit and Green Bay, Sheboygan. All differing waterfronts, but Green Bay is an example. Other than the river is truly working, or the inlet there is a working body of water for them. Ours obviously is working in a different way, but ultimately is still a natural resource that presents a lot of recreation and entertainment. I mean, it's just the whole gamut is there for opportunity.
Okay, so given that, this is what we call a segue.
Yeah.
The council took action involving the development of a plan or a design
Right.
for our waterfront, and it did not go to a local. And the council decided not to go with a local company because they found one that has done, I guess, some very impressive work around the country doing this.
In kind of some background, last year we had discussed putting in a scenic overlook in the Mead Rapids View Park. That's the green space between the courthouse and the river. That's
Okay, I know where. Yeah.
Clock Bell Tower area.
Sure.
There's some space in there that can be a nice space for seating, public seating, and for people to have lunch or to sit and when the water's flowing and it's truly a rapids there, it's kind of neat to see. So we thought about putting in some improvements there, but we decided to hold off. We have some railing concerns, and then we also have some river wall concerns. That was put in almost 100 years ago, and we haven't done any large scale maintenance to the river wall.
And remember, and we all still remember the Great Flood from a couple of years ago.
So 100 years of flooding, obviously, the wall was constructed very well. Clearly, otherwise we would have major concerns. But because of all the flooding that has taken, the city hasn't really looked deeper into the construction of that. We don't have a lot of the construction documents to demonstrate, its strength and integrity. So couple that with that's the urban section of the wall, we'll call it. And then if you move beyond like the Elks building or even on the west bank, a lot of that river wall is compromised. And so over the years, we've stuck riprap in there, poured more concrete, stuck more stone. Well, there's sinkholes all the way along. In some areas, the wall is gone, so there's some erosion concerns. So couple the improvements we wanted to make up in Mead Rapids View Park with some seating, with the erosion problems and concerns with the wall, both the the large urban wall people see, and then the smaller section of the wall, which isn't so obvious. We decided we needed to have a plan to address that. So we decided that it probably makes sense to include maybe a trail, East Riverbank Trail. Also some improvements in Demetz Park, which is the park just north of the Riverview Expressway Bridge, across from Riverview Hospital, that space down there, which in our outdoor recreational plan indicated that space could host more activity, whether it's a small shelter building or grills or even the trail piece. And then we added in there an underbridge connection for the north and south crossing of the expressway bridge. So in the same way you can cross on the west side of the river underneath the bridge, our hope is that we can cross on the east side. There was a pedestrian or a young bicyclist that was injured last year at that intersection. And,
I remember that accident, yes.
I can say that's typically my loop. There's a lot of close calls. I think whether they're not dubbed as close calls, it's not exactly safe because people are either coming over the bridge or coming down around the corner, and while 40 mile an hour speed limit doesn't allow a lot of time for pedestrians to get across. That's right. As the lights flashing and all that. So so it's kind of a comprehensive look at the riverbank on the east side of the river, from the Riverview Expressway all the way up to the Buren, Wisconsin Rapids city limits. Buren's got a project that's been in the works for some time. Street reconstruction.
And they're starting it this year, and it's we've talked about it with John Evenson on this program.
So South Buren Drive to the city limits will be reconstructed. So we've said, okay, while we may not do everything next year, we do need a plan that's going to take the entire kind of network there and complete the trail system that should exist on the East Riverbank. There are some narrow areas, so it's not like what people envision maybe on the west side exactly, but we need a design. We don't have any design for it today. We've got some survey data that'll tell us, okay, what's the elevation and maybe where things can fit, but we don't have a design. So last night's decision on the council was to hire a consultant to complete the design of the East Riverbank, from the underbridge connection and the park improvements there all the way up to really up to the foundry on the east side, but but even beyond, ultimately to plat the trail. There's some Quepco, the water power company, owns that owns the dams, owns some land that'll allow us, that we've included in their federal FERC plan, to do a rec trail. And there's a railroad crossing up in there, so we've got it's a very complicated, complex process, but this is one piece of that, and that's the design.
How is it going to be paid for? I mentioned that because, like, Buren with their project, we're able to get some DNR and federal grants for it because it's considered you're improving trail, improving habitat, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, right. Are there going to be some monies available for us along that same line?
To that point, both on the design dollars were budgeted for.
Okay, so that's already budgeted.
Design, yeah. So last night's decision to hire the design consultant was budgeted for. We did have 8 consultants, so I'll just make mention of this. We had 8 consultants from all over. That a number of them from Wisconsin that submitted projects, and they all had differing skill sets, from engineering to real strong, heavy engineering background, and kind of how you design streets, and it's very much hardscape, and here's how a trail goes in the ground, or on the ground, to more of the creative designers. We had a couple of them on that end. So we found somebody we felt that possessed a good mixture of both, but also understood how the public space interacts with the private space, and that is private enterprise. And for us, like other cities that I mentioned that had the real high return on that investment, linked the public space investments in the recreational space to the private space and the economic development. And that's really what this consultant understood. They understood that you don't just make improvements to public space for the sake of public space improvement. They have to improve quality of life. They have to maybe improve ecology or interaction with the river. But they also can have an economic development benefit, that that creates an attractiveness that people want to be there. Well, when people want to be somewhere, they typically spend a little bit of money, which is a good thing, because ultimately those dollars get reinvested back in the community. So that was who we selected. The company's name is called Supermass. They're on a pretty tight timeline.
Where are they from?
They're from New York City. So very, very tight timeline from now until August. They'll be presenting their report, I think, in late August to the council, which will have the design for the entire space.
Are they going to be meeting with groups or individuals in the community as they get here and start doing their work?
It's a great question. It was discussed at our last Finance and Property Committee meeting early May that there should be some public involvement, and there will be. However, I've heard from many people, we don't want another plan, right? That's going to sit on the shelf.
Right.
We want something that'll get us close to construction. So by way of not delaying and drawing out the process with a significant amount of public involvement, we've had public involvement in our downtown planning that we can translate into this plan. While some of it still may need some updating, may need some additional commentary and feedback, and that's what we'll welcome as we get through it with this consultant. So there won't be a series of meetings with the public on this, but there will be a number of meetings where folks can offer their ideas and perspective. Yeah,
because I would think they would want to hear. Just as they're going through the process, tell us about your community.
Yeah, and we're using the comprehensive plan as kind of the basis. We have a downtown waterfront plan, as well as a comprehensive plan, both which kind of prescribe recreational space, a trail. They all identify some of these projects. We have never done a feasibility or design for them.
We got a caller coming in, and then I do have to take a break because I'm very late with my first break. So we're going to go to the phones real quick, and you're on the air with Mayor Vruwink.
Hi, Mayor. Got a question for you. I recently done the medicine, and they were talking about how much income the baseball team down there brought into the city, the Mallards. Mm-hmm. It's a big money maker for the city.
Definitely.
When they talked about Wausau, their baseball team was a big money maker. Mm-hmm. But I don't hear anything about what our team here is paying the city or contributing to the city. I hear they're not paying anything. What's your thoughts on this?
Sure, that's a great point. So directly, we receive lease revenue from the rafters. In our last lease with them, the escalators left us with about $20,000 a year for the use of Whitterfield. Our investment into the park is in a number of ways. Our parks staff clean the restrooms like we would for any city park. Because it's not exclusively used by the rafters, it's also used by the Legion and the high school teams. There's obviously use there that it goes beyond just the rafters. Plus, we do the mowing, we do the sprinkling. We use, the utilities the city picks up, but we also use some of the cell phone tower revenues from the tower that's out there to offset some of the cost of these improvements. But directly, we do receive lease revenue from them. However, to your point, what is the big money maker for the city? We've never calculated that.
I think when you're hearing what the gentleman's talking about, that's the economic overall impact, and that's something maybe Visit Wisconsin Rapids or the Sports Commission could put some figures together.
Right on, because there is that direct benefit and indirect benefit that we see, and it's not just the check to the city that they write or the other improvements that they, contributions they make, the sports teams, those things. But you're right, there is a direct and an indirect economic benefit there.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the call.
Thank you. And with that, we have to take our first break. You're listening to The Morning Magazine on AM 1320 and WFHR.com, and it's being digitally recorded in high definition on RCCA Media. The Morning Magazine, as always, is brought to you by Comfort Air.
Good morning, and welcome back to The Morning Magazine, presented by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. It's time for part 2. Once again, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and welcome back, everybody, to today's show on AM 1320 and WFHR.com and RCCA Media, which is digitally recording this for re-airing. If you missed the announcement, the RCCA Media is now available in high definition on Solaris Channel 3, and it's streaming in high definition at rccamedia.org. Charter, you're next.
Well, that's a case, Carl, that and because Tom, the leader over there at the coordinator over at the station, reports to me. He and I interface on some of these issues, and one of the comments that we made was Solaris was willing to make this investment, co-op the investment with the city and the RCCA Media. So commend Solaris, being our local friends to take the leap and make the investment.
And since we were talking about Rafters baseball, just wanted to remind you, our listeners and viewers, that AM 1320 is your official home for Wisconsin Rapids Rafters baseball all season long. And our first broadcast is Tuesday night as the Rafters host those Wisconsin Woodchucks from Wausau in their opening night game. And our pregame programming begins at 6:20 p.m. So take your family. If you've never been to a Rafters baseball game, get some tickets and head on out to Whitterfield. If you haven't been to Whitterfield in a long time, you're wondering about all this work you've been hearing about at the stadium, I think you're going to be blown away. It's got a different look, a different vibe, and it's a lot of fun. And it's a great... So we've talked about Riverfront, and after this study, after these guys develop their plan, what's going to be the implementation of it?
Great question.
So I
only half answered your question. I just remembered the rest of your question about how are we going to pay for it.
That's right.
So, in fact, I had an email that reminded me of the half question. So we did apply to the DNR for the stewardship grant. The stewardship grant is broken into a couple of variations. Some people, in fact, the state budget has, in the governor's proposal, has nixed a lot of the stewardship implications as it relates to property acquisition and some other things. Thankfully, our ask to the state is not for buying more property. It's about improvements to the property the city already owns, the public space. So we did apply for total project cost, just round numbers that we've identified for the entirety of the stretch, a little over $2 million project cost, the price tag of the entire improvement. So substantial investment. It's, I think everybody would agree it's a very substantial investment. So we asked for over half from the state. We shall see. Late September, we should know, August, September timeframe. If we were successful either in state DNR funding directly or if the federal programs in which they weave these applications through federal dollars as well, how successful we were. I'm confident, but also very much cautiously optimistic, as it were, for what's going to happen with the state budget, and that's what the email was about as it relates to that program.
And obviously, depending on how successful you are, will affect the timeline of implementing this plan.
Correct. So our hope is, by way of exhausting state and federal dollars that we'll be able to consider local, maybe philanthropic dollars, private donations, folks that see the vision and understand how this is going to create. It's going to leverage the economic potential of our river and waterfront area. But even in the city budget, there might be opportunities by way of public works construction and doing some other things that we could divert dollars to make this happen as well.
If everything went well, how long would it take, do you think?
We considered phasing it for the DNR application purposes, but we decided we're not going to risk what's going to happen in future administrations or future budgets within the state, that our best bet is applying for the most now. So we applied for everything, not phasing it. We can phase it. In fact, we likely will implement. The phasing on the implementation will be there. Likely our first phase will be the Demetz Park or the under bridge connection starting to the south and then working our way north. The area that's near the foundry up by RCH Enterprises and the railroad crossing to Newpay or to Verso is going to be more complicated because you're going to deal with the railroad, and we've talked about the railroad on this show. The railroad is not apt to give new crossings, particularly for a wreck trail, so we may have to find a crossing to close or give up somewhere in order to gain that. Alternatively, we would just run the trail back out to First Street and come back around. The other piece to the phasing is First Street is potentially set for reconstruction in 2016. So if that happens, we'll accommodate some of these improvements probably while our crews are up there doing that work. So I would say it's a 2 to 3 year time frame from bridge all the way up to the Buren line. But the lion's share of the improvements, the East Bank Trail up to Veterans Park, our hope is within the next year and a half we can move on that.
Okay, let's get right back to the phones. Good morning. You're on the Morning Magazine with Mayor Vruwink.
Okay, thank you, and happy birthday, Carl.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah, have a good day.
I will.
And I live on Baker Street, and we're still seeing way too many 18-wheelers. And they all aren't making deliveries up here at the eating place. And a lot of rail out of Marshfield, and the one at Sherry there, DeBoer Trucking, and they have no business on Baker.
Right. Thank you for the call. I do know that the police department has done enforcement because I've actually gotten calls from those that have gotten tickets or gotten warnings. So I know that we are enforcing it, but to the extent I'll mention to the chief and the deputy chief that we need to consider doing some more enforcement in that area or patrolling for that issue. I do know that some other neighbors of yours, I'm guessing, have called my office directly, and I have brought this up in the past, but it's been some time. So to hear that, particularly these two more local, we say sometimes the out-of-towners don't know. I mean, if it's not a truck route or they get lost, but these folks, it's safe to say they have a better idea of where they should and shouldn't be.
Yes.
So thank you for the call,
other one is the big, huge out-of-town garbage that haul to our landfill. I don't think they belong on Baker. Hell, the windows rattle if they're sometimes when they're real full.
Okay. And I don't know what they're waiting.
And I called once, and some gal at the desk at the police department said, "Oh, I think it's legal." And I said, "Well, I wish you'd follow up on it." And I don't know.
Well, these are not just garbage trucks, right? These are the actual transfer trucks. So you're talking the large 18-wheeler,
the big
trucks.
jobbers.
Yep. They're transferring to our landfill, right?
Yep.
Okay, I will. It's pretty safe to say we know who they are. There's not a lot of haulers that transfer garbage, so that's another, hopefully an easy one for us.
Okay.
Okay, that's my questions, and thanks a lot, and keep up the good work.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you bet. Bye.
Bye-bye. I got another one for you, and it happens on my street, 2 Mile Avenue. Every once in a while, I see a Walmart semi go by.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I'm going to. That was my question. What are you doing on this? Is he lost, or is he going down 2 Mile and then taking a right up 16th?
That's, to me, it'd be too many stops.
So I don't know what the reason for that, but I've noticed that a couple of times.
Sure.
Big Walmart. I'm going, that's not supposed to be on our street.
Yes. Well, if you do see it, Carl, send us an email and we can forward it on to their management over there to inform their trucking. Group, because that shouldn't be happening.
Okay.
Obviously, these streets are not constructed to withstand that weight, and that's to the point. I mean, Baker used to be. It's obviously still. It hasn't been reconstructed, but it's not a through truck route anymore. And
no.
that traffic shouldn't be on there.
No, that's why we have the expressway.
Yeah.
Still, 424-2600 pound 1320 on a U.S. cellular phone gets you on the air with Mayor Vruwink. Other concerns that you talked about it a little bit, the budget.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff going on about the state budget as it's being rewritten now by the legislature after getting the heat that they got from the public. Still, any concerns?
Rewritten is a good that's a good characterization, I think. The governor obviously put forth his budget, and there were some pretty controversial things in there. Some of the controversial things have stood and will stand, I think, because they banked on revenue that didn't exist. That the legislature was hoping that this new windfall of tax collections would occur, and hasn't. And they had kind of had it pre-spent, and none of that occurred. So a lot of the cuts will stand as it relates to the university system and others because they just don't have the revenues. They decided that they can't raise, and this is what I was in Madison on Wednesday afternoon for with the mayors around the state to talk about transportation. That because they decide they are so anti-tax, anti-fee, anti-everything as it relates to revenue increases, there will be no new dollars for transportation projects. And we know, I just drove in the caller earlier on the call about West Grand Avenue on the section over here where the concrete is aged, 34 North and 13 South or 8th Street. All, in the next coming even decade, let's say, we divert a lot of dollars annually for concrete patching. People see it, right? You got to drive and dodge all the cones. I mean, but there's no long-term plan for those projects, and it's because they refuse to fund the transportation fund. And
that, to me, is just idiotic. I don't care whether you have an R or a D by your name, and everyone always talks about, well, we need to run government more like a business. Well, no business would ever say, I'm never going to increase my prices.
Yep. And that's the conundrum, because the legislature is hearing from the business community, as they should, that we need good roads and great transportation. Right. And the governor's office says, nope, we can't. I'm not gonna stand behind or support any fee increases. So his own transportation secretary proposed, tens of millions of dollars in fee increases, very diverse, mix. And I, would agree with some of them, disagree maybe with others, but ultimately they understood that we needed to raise revenue. So you got to put forth a plan. Well, then you would, massage the plan and our proposal, and then adopt it eventually. Well, it's been said that there will be no increases. So it'll be interesting to watch that issue on transportation. But there are a couple of other interesting ones. One that last Thursday that came out, and that was on room tax collection. The Hotel Association, in a very sneaky way, that morning went to the Joint Finance Committee, and there was a motion to move the majority of room tax collections directly into tourism. And some cities fund some of their operations. We thankfully don't, so our impact would be less here. But some cities like Wausau divert a fair amount of their room tax money, the tax that people pay when they stay in a hotel, to their general operations. So whether it's parks or street cleaning or whatever, they would have an impact. So
I can see their argument. Hey, listen, they benefit from parks, and when they visit our community, they can help pay for it.
And there is some of that. We fund a number of things with our room tax, not like we used to the extent that we used to. But our tourism entity receives the lion's share of it. And I agree, it's tourism, it's a tax, but ultimately let the locals decide what's best for that tax collection.
That's
it's not
why
the state to tell us.
Okay,
how to spend it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because now I'm getting confused. Because, in the earlier days, you had these two political parties, and the Republican Party always stood for decentralized government and local control, the closest level of government to the people.
Right.
Now they're in power, and they're acting like the Democrats that they complained about when
it was best to imagine those best mentality.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess your philosophies don't mean anything. It's whoever's in power who controls what's going on.
What's the right place, the right time for control. Yeah. So it's been, I appreciate our state league. That's the League of Municipalities that informs us. I mean, obviously these things from the property tax collection and the assessment, the county's doing the assessment, all of these things kind of just dropped out of the sky, and everybody had to react. Well, the legislature, in large part, and I give them credit for listening to the local constituencies to say, that's not going to work now. And maybe in the future we could phase it in, but not today. Some
of the governor's biggest business allies have criticized the way this budget was vetted, and that it was apparently was just a close group of advisors that put this document together, and then he went out and started running for president.
Right.
In the meantime, it caught department heads who have to implement this stuff off guard. They're the ones that usually go out and sell this thing, and all of a sudden they were going, what? There's what in my budget?
Well, and that's the interesting thing when you listen to legislators, even legislators on both sides of the aisle.
Scott Krug was critical of the process.
Krug has talked about how that's, we all know what the governor's up to, so it's left, the legislature's left to
so now
kind
you're
of
leaving
decide.
us with the mess.
Yeah. And it's hard to make that promise of not raising taxes or raising fee revenue and to govern under that. I mean, you have to cut, right? And you start cutting things that they're painful, and you cut things that you probably didn't have enough time to explore the consequences of those. And
you cut things that are painful or start really hurting people. People remember that come election time.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
I mean, and that's
the business community from what I can tell. I know there's obviously things that they're pleased with, but at the end of the day, if they can't agree to fund basic things like transportation,
they need roads.
That's critical to their operations. They'll go somewhere else. Yeah. That's the reality.
Here's the thing too, like you mentioned, highways. The longer we put off doing important improvement work, the more expensive it's going to be down the road.
That's right. Yeah, we see the county having to do a significant amount of borrowing. We last night approved $1 million in general obligation bonds, and we do bond annually for our street construction projects. But sometimes you can get into trouble by bonding.
Fortunately, right
in the state budget, right? Bonding a record amount of transportation bonding. Well, what's that going to do to our tax collections in the future? It beholdens them to debt payments, just payments for debt, not anything new, not anything that might be a priority at the time or a need at the time.
Or could enhance your state economic development.
That's right.
And then
we're watching the email also stated that on Wednesday they were going to be talking, or Thursday talking about the WDC program, and that's obviously had an audit and that's not come out favorable. And that affects, unfortunately, some of those things have far-reaching effects on cities. Like we're going to be vying for some dollars to help us with our downtown property acquisition and some of the cleanup and stuff there. And we're watching that very close, because when audits come out and bad press happens, sometimes people overreact and they get a little bit too far ahead of themselves.
We are going to be, and people have been getting on me, well, when are we going to hear the Democrats' view on this? You've had Scott Krug on. Well, guess what, folks? We confirmed it yesterday, State Senator Julie Lassa will be our guest in part 2 of Friday's program. And the WEDC audit, because she is on the WEDC board, is going to be topic numero uno.
Especially if they're going to talk about the funding on Thursday. Joint Finance is going to weigh in on that. That'll be an interesting discussion, I'm sure, to tune in for.
Yeah, so that will be your chance to hear the Democrats' perspective on this. But the bottom line is it shows the political dysfunction, quite honestly. As you make promises that you can't realistically keep, but because of ideology you have to, otherwise you're going to be punished.
That's right.
And both parties fall into that, and both either in the spending or in the taxing.
Right. And it requires a balance and a good plan and proposals vetted. I mean, you've got to have kind of an all hands on deck. You've got to be listening and test these things with certain groups just to make sure that they can swallow it.
Yeah, and that Representative Krug said on this program, hey, there's no way we were going to support some of this stuff because based on what we heard, and they're the ones that but it has to make it more and more difficult for whether it be you, President Evenson in Buren, or the folks in Grand Rapids or Port Edwards, any level of local government, to plan.
Right. That's right. Unless you want to borrow. You can borrow. You can borrow and borrow.
Yeah, and the taxpayers will love you for that.
Well, but that's in a lot of these cities. That's their only place to turn, because they don't have the growth to give them new tax revenue. We
got to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to wrap it up. We'll wrap this up real quick, Your Honor. Final thoughts on our morning.
Happy to take calls at my office, or if people have concerns, please reach out. Otherwise, I'll be back on the show next month.
Yeah.
At the same time, same place.
Yep. And River City's media will be here, and we appreciate the phone calls and the participation by you listeners this morning. And with
active show today.
Yes, it was. And thank you for being here. Hey, have a little bit of my birthday treat.
I think I might. night. It smells pretty good.
Okay. And with that, we're going to wrap up this edition of the Morning Magazine here on AM 1320 and WFHR.com and RCCA Media. CBS News is coming up next.